It begins in silence, not the silence of peace, but of absence. A silence so deep it echoes. The soul wanders in that darkness, not knowing where God is, or even if He is near. And yet, it is precisely there, in that unlit place, that God begins His most intimate work. This is the story of St. John of the Cross, the mystic who taught the world that sometimes, to find the light, we must first embrace the dark. Spain, 16th century. The world was trembling with change. Kings and empires rose and fell. The church was in reform. And somewhere in the small town of Fontiveros, in 1542, a child named Juan de Yepes y Alvarez was born into poverty and struggle. His father, once from a noble family, had married for love and lost everything for it. When John's father died, his mother worked as a weaver to feed her sons. From his earliest days, John knew hunger, hardship, and humility. But he also knew something deeper, a longing, a yearning that no worldly comfort could fill. He would later call it La Noche Oscura del Alma, the dark night of the soul. As a boy, he worked in a hospital for the poor, tending to the sick and dying. He saw suffering not as something to escape, but as a window into the mystery of love. Those years shaped him. He entered the Carmelite order, seeking a life of prayer and simplicity. But the Carmelites of his time had grown comfortable. Wealthy monasteries, relaxed discipline. John dreamed of something more radical, a return to the silence of the desert, the fire of the first saints. Then one day, he met a woman who shared that vision. Teresa of Avila. A brilliant and passionate reformer, Teresa saw in John a soul carved for holiness. Together, they began to reform the Carmelite order, founding new communities rooted in poverty, prayer, and solitude. But reform never comes without resistance. Within a few years, John's zeal became a threat to those who preferred comfort over conversion. Accused of rebellion, he was arrested by his own brothers. In 1577, he was locked inside a tiny, dark cell in Toledo. No window, barely any light, only a small slit where scraps of bread were passed through. The walls dripped with dampness. He slept on the floor. He was flogged publicly by his fellow friars for defying their rule. There, in that prison, stripped of dignity and light, he entered his true night, the dark night of the soul. It was not just the night of suffering, but of silence. God seemed gone. Prayer felt empty, the one he loved most, invisible. But instead of despairing, John listened. In the silence of that darkness, he began to write, words that would later become some of the most beautiful poetry in the Christian world. On a dark night, kindled in love with yearnings, oh, happy chance, I went forth without being observed, my house being now at rest. In that darkness, he found not the absence of God, but the presence of a love too bright for the eyes to see. He realized that the dark night was not punishment, it was purification. God was stripping away his attachments, his pride, his need for consolation. It was a fire that burned everything that was not love, leaving only love itself. He would later write, to reach satisfaction in all, desire satisfaction in nothing. To come to possess all, desire the possession of nothing. To arrive at being all, desire to be nothing. Those words are not despair, they are liberation. They speak of a soul that has gone beyond wanting to feel God, to simply being with God, even in silence. After 9 long months in that cell, John escaped. Under cover of night, he slipped through a window using a rope made from his blanket and fled across the rooftops. Weak and wounded, he found refuge in a nearby convent of nuns who nursed him back to life. From that moment on, he became a living symbol of inner freedom. They had chained his body, but not his soul. In the years that followed, John's writings blossomed into masterpieces of Christian mysticism. The Spiritual Canticle, the living flame of love, and the dark night of the soul. His poetry is filled with paradox, fire and night, pain and peace, emptiness and fullness. Through those paradoxes, he taught the world that the soul's journey is not linear. It spirals, descending into shadow only to rise into light. For John, the dark night was not a punishment from God. It was an invitation to deeper intimacy. He described two nights, the night of the senses, when God removes worldly pleasures, and the night of the spirit, when even spiritual comfort is taken away. In both, the soul learns to love God, not for His gifts, but for Himself alone. The soul that journeys to God, he wrote, must leave behind all that is not God. It's easy to love God when we feel His presence, when prayers are answered and hearts are warm. But John calls us to love God even when we feel nothing, when the heavens are silent, when everything seems lost. That, he said, is true faith. He once compared the soul in darkness to a blindfolded person led by a gentle hand. The person cannot see where they are going, but they trust the one who leads them. That trust, that surrender, is the essence of mystical love. As he aged, John continued his ministry quietly, founding reformed monasteries and guiding souls. But even among his followers, he faced misunderstanding and jealousy. His humility was so deep that when praised for his holiness, he would say, "The only thing that I deserve is to be condemned by God, if not for His mercy." His final years were marked by illness. He suffered from open sores and fevers that left him in constant pain. Yet, he never lost his serenity. When someone asked what he desired in his final days, he whispered, "To suffer and be despised for love of Christ." He died on December 14, 1591, in Ubeda, at the age of 49. As he took his final breath, he murmured, "Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit." His life, like his writings, was a paradox. A man of shadows who taught others how to see the light. Today, St. John of the Cross is known as one of the greatest mystics of all time, declared a doctor of the Church for his profound understanding of the soul's journey toward union with God. His words continue to console those who walk through darkness, reminding them that absence can be presence in disguise. In our modern world, filled with noise, distraction, and endless striving, John's message feels almost like a whisper from another realm. He tells us that faith is not about feeling close to God, but about remaining faithful even when He seems far. The dark night is not the death of faith, it is its purification. In the twilight of life, he wrote, God will not judge us by our deeds, but by our love. Perhaps that's the hidden beauty of his teaching, that every soul, no matter how lost, can become light, not by escaping darkness, but by allowing God to transform it. He once said, "Where there is no love, put love, and you will draw out love." That single sentence is the antidote to despair. It's the map through every night of the soul. So when your prayers feel unanswered, when you walk through silence, when faith feels empty, remember John. Remember that even in darkness, the light is working, unseen but alive. For just as dawn is born from night, so is the soul reborn from surrender. St. John of the Cross did not teach the world how to escape suffering. He taught it how to sanctify it. He showed that the deepest darkness can become a doorway, and that sometimes God hides, not to abandon us, but to draw us closer. And perhaps that's the secret every mystic learns, that love grows strongest in silence, and that the truest light is found, not when we see, but when we trust. The dark night of the soul is not the end. It is the beginning. The moment when the human heart, stripped of everything, finally becomes capable of receiving the infinite. And when that happens, the night itself begins to glow.